Alright, you negative bastards. You asked for it, now you shall receive.
Good. Use your aggressive feelings, boy. Let the hate flow through you.
Hello everyone, Britton here, also known as Samoki Dude, and welcome back to my channel. So, I forgot to mention in my best books of 2023, I was going to ask you guys if you wanted most disappointing books I read in 2023. I didn't want to do most hated because, in all honesty, a little too hyperbolic. I mean, I try to give a book every chance. I try to give every book that I read a fair shake. And most of the time, I rarely come away from a book genuinely hating it. I'm often just disappointed most of the time. I know, cliche stuff. But believe it or not, there are some books out there that I read in 2023 that I did not really care for. So, yeah, that's what we're talking about today. I asked you guys on the community, and of course, you guys wanted me to give in to my hatred. If you probably saw earlier. So, yeah, let's get to it. Well, I'll admit, I actually had a pretty good reading year. There were a couple books I thought were just fine, but I didn't add them to the list because they didn't really go that extra mile to where I was, like, disappointed in it, or I was genuinely mad at it. No, there were some points in these books that I actually got pretty frustrated, to be honest with you. And my opinion might even change at some point. That I might shock some of you, but I'm not completely against changing my mind. This may change in the future, but for right now, these are the most disappointing books that I read in 2023. No comics on this list, because most of the comics I read I enjoyed. Well, I guess I should stop stalling and get to it, but yeah. My most disappointing books of 2023. Let's do it. So the first one I have here that I'm going to talk about is one I've already kind of discussed, and you might also see a review for coming out soon. And first review of 2024 anyway, and that book is The Republic of Thieves by Scott Lynch. Now, I went into this book with pretty mid expectations. I knew that this was the one that kind of divided people, let's say. There were still some people who enjoyed this book. There's still a lot of people who think it's a step down from the other two. I am of the latter category. I love The Lies of Locke Lamora, really enjoyed Red Seas Under Red Skies, but The Republic of Thieves, despite a pretty strong start, makes a really critical mistake in the first about 100 pages and never really recovers from it. This book genuinely had a moment that had me just frothing at the mouth and just, yeah, it was not fun. You can ask Jason about it. I was pretty upset. But The Republic of Thieves is not a complete dumpster fire, I should note. It was just really a massive disappointment as in comparing to the other two. Now, a lot of people were kind of irritated with the romance. The romance didn't really bother me all that much. I actually liked how Lynch wrote the romance. But when I read this book, it just felt like something was off. And it makes sense because Scott Lynch had been going through a lot of mental turmoil at the time when he was writing this. Now, do I think that excuses the pretty lackluster quality of this book? No, but I definitely can understand that maybe his heart wasn't fully in it. And, I do feel bad for the guy, of course. I mean, I hope he's, gotten better since then. Yeah, Republic of Thieves was a bit of a letdown comparison to other. And what sucks about this book is that Scott Lynch is a master at putting his characters into precarious situations. How the hell are they going to get out of it? And then in this book, he just drops the most blatant Deus Ex Machina I have ever seen in my life that just was completely torpedoed the tension from the first 100 pages of this book. It was very disappointing. And also just the political stuff, I really could not care less about what was going on. So yeah, this book just wasn't cutting it for me. So yeah, Republic of Thieves is definitely on that list. Oh yeah, just put it down there. Next book I have here is one I'm kind of not sure about. I might actually reread it again at some point because I'll admit I don't know if I was in the right headspace when I read it. But that was Walter Mosley's Down the River Unto the Sea. Now, I liked the previous Walter Mosley book that I read. That was Devil in Blue Dress. Though I found that how he wrapped up that story was a little bit too convoluted. I was like, wait, what? That was the big buildup? This one was just, oh man, I don't know what to say. I saw that Robert from Punk Rock Cereal Bowl really enjoyed this book recently, and it made me want to pick this one up again because, in all honesty, I don't know if I was really in the right headspace, because I'll admit, when I read this book, by the time I had read this book, I was kind of in a noir mood, and I was starting to get kind of burned out on noir, so I don't know if my burnout really had to do with my dislike of this book, but, yeah, I felt this book was just really, really chaotically plotted. It just kind of goes from here to there. It didn't really feel like there was a lot of cohesion. The idea is really cool, and if you've ever heard of the story of Muammar al-Albia, I think is his name, he was a guy who was convicted of murdering 2 police officers, though there are certain activists who believe he actually didn't do that. This book is actually a fictionalization of that story, and also about a guy who was framed for a crime that he didn't commit. Which intrigued me. I was like, oh yeah, let's see what this book was about. I liked Devil in a Blue Dress. I thought it was a good book. But this one just didn't cut it for me. Again, it just felt like it lacked cohesion. But again, I don't know if I just was burned out on reading noir and I just wasn't in the right headspace when I was reading this book. But yeah, I was very disappointed with this book. I really didn't care about what was going on. There was some good stuff in here. I mean, you know, I like the guy. I like the guy's relationship with his daughter. That was really well done. And again, I really love the hook of this story, but the rest of it is just, oh man, it wasn't good. I'll just put it that way. It just wasn't good. And it sucks, because I do think Walter Mosley is a talented writer. I think he's a very talented noir writer, if you already saw my review of Devil in a Blue Dress. I think he's a talented guy, and I'm definitely going to read more of the Easy Rollins books at some point. I just haven't really gotten around to picking them up yet. But yeah, this book was kind of a disappointment in comparison to the Devil in a Blue Dress. Again, maybe I'll read it again at some point to see if my mind changes or if it just isn't that good. But, yeah, I found myself really not vibing with this book a lot. But yeah, this one wasn't too fun to read. I put it down, I was like, oh man, that was just sad. Also, I had also just read Mystic River, which was an amazing book. And I was kind of still on the hangover after that, so yeah, this book did not satiate that. So yeah, Down the River Into the Sea, not a good book. I didn't really care for it anyway. Next one is another one that I kind of, oh man. So I read this book because I had heard it was kind of like Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, and I already did a review of this book on my channel, so I'll link that below if you guys want to see it. But that is The Black-Tongued Thief by Christopher Buehlman. Now, aside from some pretty great world building, and also the cover here is phenomenal, this book was just, I didn't care for it. It kind of felt like someone aping off of Joe Abercrombie without really understanding what makes Abercrombie so good. The narrative voice got pretty tiresome pretty quickly. I mean, if you really want to get an idea on how I felt, you can watch my review. I pretty much explain why I didn't care for it. Also, my friend Jason, I think, put it quite nicely why I didn't really care for this book. There isn't really an arc for the characters in this story. Buehlman really tries to go for some emotional beats, but they completely fall flat because I don't really care about what's going on. And it's just kind of a letdown all across. And it sucks because there's some cool stuff in here. I really like the goblins, for instance. I like the backstory about the Goblin War, and that this is more of a fantastical story than, you know, something like The First Law, which is still fantastical, but is more grounded in terms of the content. Black-Tongued Thief was just, kind of a dud. Not really something I actively hated, but I just kind of grew bored with it, and it was just kind of a just kind of a meh, just kind of a bleh kind of book. And I mean, there's some authors I enjoy who have blurbed this, like let's see. Oh wait a minute. I guess not. I haven't actually read any of these authors who have been blurbed here, but I mean, if you guys if you guys read this and enjoy this, that's great. I mean, I'm really glad for you. And the new book is actually coming out this year. It's a prequel. I think is actually following the Fawford, or no, not Fawford. Fawford's the thief. The Grey Mouser character. I use Fawford and the Grey Mouser with this book because that's kind of the first comparison I go to. It's basically the Grey Mouser character's kind of backstory. This one is from the thief's perspective, and yeah, it just didn't really appeal to me. Oh, sorry, the thing is getting. I don't know why I got the hardcover. That was probably the part that should have told me I wasn't gonna enjoy this, the Omen, if you will. But yeah, it just feels kind of just kind of bleh. I didn't really care for it too much. I thought the Black Tongue Thief was really disappointing. It sucks. I really wanted to like this book. This was kind of and I probably should have kind of taken the warning because I had started this, and I really didn't love the first line. It just kind of felt like Joe Abercrombie, like, wannabe, you know. But it just, again, this book is basically like if someone tried to write like Joe Abercrombie, but like doesn't really get what makes Joe Abercrombie good. Yeah, with also a dash of Fawford and the Grey Mouser, which I mentioned this in my review, but I actually asked the author, Christopher Buehlman, if he was in any way inspired by Fawford and the Grey Mouser. He was not. And as a matter of fact, he mentioned to me that he started reading those stories after he wrote this book. So, just there you go. All right, so the last book I have here is probably my most disappointing book that I read this year, and it's kind of hilarious because this guy he wrote my favorite read of 2022. You know who it is because I don't shut up about him on this channel, but it is Embassy Town from China Mieville. I also did a review of this book, and if you want to check it out and see my thoughts on it, that one actually did pretty well. A lot of people really liked that one, so thank you all for really liking that video. But yeah, Embassy Town, this book was kind of doomed from the start, let's say. I'll admit, again, I wasn't really quite in the right headspace, I don't think, when I was reading this, but I was not appealed by how this story really went out. And it's sort of the trap that a lot of science fiction falls into. Embassy Town, on a thematic level, is quite brilliant. It's a really compelling exploration on how we relate to language, and how language relates to culture, and how language defines us as human beings. The problem with that is that the story in this is just a huge pile of bleh. I didn't really care about what was going on, and Mieville, while he still writes very well, this book feels so just stolid and lifeless in comparison to the energy and the adventurousness of the Baz Lag books, at least the first two anyway. This book was just kind of bleh. It was really sad because I really wanted to like this book. I mean, imagine I had actually done a vote in 2022 on which book to read first, Perdido Street Station or Embassy Town. I'm quite glad that I decided on Perdido Street Station, because if I read Embassy Town first, I probably would have stayed away from Mieville for a bit after that. So I'm glad that the stars aligned that day. Now, have I given up on our dear Lord and Savior, his China-ness, as my friend Natalia likes to call him? No, of course not. I think that Mieville is still a brilliant writer, when he puts his mind to the task anyway. I do think that he is a genuinely innovative and easily one of the most imaginative writers in fantastic fiction working today. That isn't Jeff Vandermeer or Neil Gaiman anyway. But Mieville, it feels kind of like a misfire. It was kind of, again, it was just kind of bleh. You know, I was really sad because I really wanted to like this book, and it seemed like the type of sci-fi that would appeal to me. And I was like, oh man, I hope it's like, you know, Perdido Street Station or The Scar, because those books are awesome. And it was not. And the last couple Mievilles I've read are duds. I really didn't care for Iron Council, and I didn't really care for Embassy Town. Again, I did a review of Embassy Town on my on this channel. I don't know why I was about to say something else, like it's somewhere else. So, oh yeah, I'll link that down below. But yeah, I think Embassy Town was probably my most disappointing book of this year. And it sucks, because I really like Mieville, and I do want him to write another book, but I'm afraid that maybe Perdido Street Station and The Scar has ruined his bibliography for me, because I love those two books a lot. Perdido Street Station a little more than The Scar, but, you know, it's not too much of a problem. I do actually want to reread The City and the City at some point, because I remember liking it, but I wasn't really, there's some stuff I don't remember about it, so I want to read it again and see how it goes. But I remember enjoying it, and not as much as Perdido anyway, but I still enjoyed it a lot. And I do think that China Mieville is a phenomenal writer when he puts his mind to the task. I would not start with Embassy Town. The City and the City and Perdido Street Station are way better starting off points for Mieville, if you ask me anyway. I've only read 5 of his books so far. And he is actually coming back. I just learned recently he's teaming up with Keanu Reeves, of all people, to do a novel based on Keanu Reeves' comic Berserker, which I have not read. But a bit of an odd pairing, but hopefully it goes well. So, yeah, I wish you well, Mieville. And he's also coming out with a solo novel in 2025. I'm really excited about that. But, yes. Embassy Town. Not a great book. You may like it more than me. I don't want to scare that. One of my things about this channel, I'm kind of like Mike in that way. I don't want to scare people off from reading. If you want to read this, go right ahead. And if you want to go read the other 3 books, go right ahead. You may even enjoy them more than I did. But these are books that I personally did not care for. So, yeah, Embassy Town is my number 1. So, yeah, I'm just gonna put that down. Well, that's it. Those are my spiciest, hottest, hellfire takes on books and the most disappointing books that I read this last year anyway. Will I probably read more disappointing books this year? I probably will at some point, but hopefully that will come a long time from now. And my reading is actually starting out pretty good this year, so yeah. I think that's it. So, yeah. Alright, not to waste any more time, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to check me out on Twitter, you can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Good Reason Letterboxd, where I write reviews that are probably more coherent than the one you just heard right now. You can also find me on Discord. You can come hang out with me on there. I also started a Blue Sky account if you want to find me on there and follow me. So, yeah. Until next time, see you guys later.